There are some encounters that leave behind an inexplicable coldness. The person standing before you speaks, smiles, even displays all human behaviors, yet you still sense something missing. Everything seems complete on the surface, but you feel an inexplicable absence. When you notice this, it's as if the very air in the room grows heavy. This feeling is neither coincidence nor fantasy. It is the perception of something Rudolf Steiner, in his anthroposophical research, defined as one of the most unsettling realities of our time. In this exploration, we will approach the unspoken. We will examine the signs of an existence lacking a spiritual foundation, not to judge, but to understand, not to create fear, but to sharpen the soul's perception. According to Steiner, there are 4 levels of human existence: physical, etheric, astral, and ego. The physical body is matter itself. The astral body is the carrier of emotions. And the etheric body is the order of life. But what directs all of these, transforming them into a true self, is the immortal essence, the ego. The ego does not automatically emerge with the birth of a body. Its settling into this world is like a spirit taking root in matter. Incarnation is not just a biological process, but a karmic journey. The spirit finds the body, settles into it, animates it, works on it layer by layer. But what happens if this process is not completed? When this spiritual essence cannot fully settle into the body, what emerges is a person who appears perfect from the outside, but is incomplete on the inside. They live life on the surface, but a void echoes deep within. You sense a subtle awareness, a depth that goes beyond the visible. The pupil does not merely reflect light, it also radiates something from the invisible inner world. Those whose sense of self is not fully embodied lack this radiance. The eyes reflect light, move correctly, focus, and respond to stimuli. However, it's like looking at a closed camera, a technically perfect surface with no consciousness behind it. You can't explain it rationally, but your body reacts instinctively. A discomfort passes through your spine. An inexplicable chill envelops you. The urge to look away becomes overwhelming. The second sign reveals itself in the absence of a true moral struggle within the human being. A spiritually endowed being always carries within them the tension between 2 worlds, the dark call of base desires and the silent invitation of higher ideals. As Steiner said, without this inner tension, humans cannot develop, because the self awakens only when caught between the impulsive and the sacred. Conscience is born from the spark of these opposing forces. Freedom is shaped by the necessity of choice. But, in a being whose sense of self is not yet fully formed, this battlefield never arises. There is no internal debate, no inner observer. Actions are shaped not by an internal measure, but by external consequences. It is as if there is an invisible ledger. What does it gain? What does it lose? What punishment does it bring? What reward does it provide? Decisions are made not by the light of the soul, but by an algorithmic calculation. In such a being, even evil becomes weightless. Oppression occurs without weight. There is no inner consistency, because there is no self that has to live with the consequences. The third sign emerges in the relationship with silence. For an awakened soul, solitude is the space for growth. In the silence of the outer world, the self begins to speak. The soul expands. Insights rise from the depths. Steiner taught that spiritual development is impossible without these stages of seclusion: meditation, contemplation, silent presence. These are exercises in which the self grasps and strengthens itself. The soulless person flees this silence with a helplessness they themselves do not understand, not because they consciously feel fear, but because in silence, the mere fact that nothing exists is unbearable. Every second must be filled with sound, movement, distractions. The media's constant barrage of sound, the forced scrolling of digital feeds, superficial conversations that never go deep, all of these are used to suppress inner teachings. What you see in this restlessness is not liveliness. It is an escape from one's own absence. Instead of a body that draws strength from silence and returns refreshed, the soulless one returns even emptier, even more open to external stimuli. This cycle intensifies until any kind of depth, reflection, or contemplation is perceived as threatening. The fourth sign manifests itself in the nature of relationships. According to the anthroposophical understanding, true love is the ability to recognize and honor what is spiritual in the other. To love is to encounter the other's self, to see their uniqueness, to recognize their spiritual dignity. This requires that the person also possess a self capable of such an encounter. A soulless person cannot know this kind of love. For them, other people are tools, objects, functions to fulfill their needs. The relationship continues as long as it is beneficial. When this benefit ends, it is terminated without hesitation, without pain, without looking back. Since no real bond was ever formed, there's no sense of loss, only contracts that can be fulfilled or broken. On the surface, these people can be perfect partners. They learn the right words, the expected gestures, the appropriate responses. They study emotionality like a foreign language and apply it with surprising sensitivity. But behind the mask, there is nothing. There is no real empathy, no genuine concern for the other's well-being, no understanding of the spiritual dimension of intimacy. The fifth sign is perhaps the most subtle and dangerous: energetic parasitism. Steiner explained in his lectures that every living being is connected to cosmic life forces. The etheric body of a person with a solid sense of self is in constant exchange with universal parental forces, renewing and regenerating itself, nourished by non-sensory sources. Of course, it is almost impossible to be aware of this flow. For beings that are not fully embodied, this channel is blocked or non-existent. They cannot draw sustenance from the spiritual realms. They still need life force to sustain their biological functions. They must obtain this force externally, and the richest source is other human beings. Spirits who are particularly sensitive, empathetic, and have highly developed etheric bodies become the preferred targets. You know the feeling you get after encountering certain people? It's not just tiredness, but exhaustion on a deeper level, as if something has been sucked out of you. Your thoughts are cloudy, your emotions are mixed, your energy is inexplicably low. The more you try to help, the more attention and care you show, the weaker you become. This is not an exchange, it is exploitation. The soulless self is usually unaware of this. It is done automatically by the survival instinct of a system that cannot exist otherwise. But the consequences for you are real. Repeated contact can weaken your etheric body, cloud your spiritual perception, and separate you from your own spiritual source. Steiner warned about spiritual hygiene, recognizing which connections give life and which take it away. This is not a matter of sympathy or moral judgment. It is a matter of energetic reality. Some beings nourish, others consume. Making this distinction is a skill that every spiritually awakening human being needs to develop. Protecting one's own development. How does the absence of spirit manifest? Steiner's research points to several possible causes. The incarnation of the self is a highly complex process dependent on many factors. Karmic constellations play a role in this process. Similarly, the cosmic conditions at the moment of birth and the structure of the physical and etheric bodies provided by the parents are also important. In an ideal situation, a spiritual being, a self, Wishing to achieve incarnation finds a suitable body and completely takes it over in the first years of life. However, this process can fail or be incomplete. Sometimes the physical or etheric body is not suitable for hosting a complete self. Sometimes, the incarnating being itself lacks the power or maturity to connect fully to the world. In today's increasingly materialistic atmosphere, it is becoming more and more difficult for highly developed spiritual beings to find a way into the world. The spiritual environment has become so dense, so disconnected from the higher worlds, that the subtle channels of connection are becoming blocked. So, what happens to the empty bodies? Steiner discussed various possibilities. Sometimes these bodies are occupied by elemental beings, lower forms of existence that have not undergone human development. Sometimes Ahrimanic forces, the divine intelligences that Steiner defined as the opposites of human evolution, use these empty shells for their own purposes. Sometimes the body simply remains empty, a biological automaton, operating by instinct and imitation, with no mental inhabitants. It is important to distinguish between a sleeping spirit and a lost spirit. Many people are spiritually asleep. Their spirits are present, but they are covered by illusions. They are numbed by consumption and social conditioning, unable to reach their depths, but their essence is there. With the right impulses, with crises that cause awakening, and with spiritual practices, they can awaken. The connection can be reestablished. Nothing can awaken in the complete absence of self. The sleeping princess is not waiting for a kiss. The castle is empty. All attempts to reach these beings spiritually are futile, because there is no one to receive. This realization is painful, especially for empathetic souls who instinctively seek to see the divine in every person. However, the ability to discern is part of spiritual maturity. Living with the soulless is not neutral. Their presence has a corrosive effect on the mental atmosphere. Steiner compared this to an infection on the etheric level. The coldness they radiate can be contagious. The emotional numbness they embody can be contagious. Those who remain with them for long periods may begin to question the reality of the soul, to view their own sensitivity as weakness, to dismiss empathy as naivety. In modern societies that prioritize productivity over humanity, soulless behavior is often rewarded. The ability to make decisions without emotional involvement, to use others as tools, to act without remorse, this is seen as a sign of power, professionalism, and determination in many areas. Those who cannot display this coldness are considered too soft, too emotional, not resilient enough. Thus, a culture emerges where soulless existence becomes the ideal. Most people are not truly soulless, but those who are soulless invisibly set the norms and force others to conform to them. Therefore, for a spiritually awake person, the world becomes a struggle to preserve one's own essence. Steiner's teachings clearly state this: the human self can only be preserved through conscious effort. Taking care of your body during periods of spiritual exhaustion, connecting with nature, turning to art and love. This means keeping the roots of the soul alive. When you develop the ability to recognize the soulless, you enter a special form of loneliness. You see things that others do not see or choose not to see. You understand the dynamics hidden in normal consciousness. This can isolate you. If you express what you perceive, you may be perceived as judgmental, paranoid, or heartless. The truth of soulless existence is a truth that no one wants to hear. However, this loneliness also carries an honor. This loneliness is a sign that your perception has sharpened, that you can access levels of reality that are closed to most people. Steiner says, the path of initiation must pass through periods of isolation. This solitude is not a punishment, but a process of maturation. Your task is not to transform the soulless. This is impossible. Your task is to protect yourself and those around you. It is to protect those whose power of discernment is still weak, the newly awakening spirits, and to create spaces where true humanity can sprout. For the purity of the spiritual realm is like the clarity of the air, invisible but vital. Encountering the soulless does not weaken you. On the contrary, it sharpens your awareness. Every encounter makes the spark of life within you more distinct. Love, doubt, pain, and growth all are proof that the spirit is alive. As Steiner said, spiritual knowledge frees us not from difficulties, but from illusions. This awareness also frees you from the guilt of not being able to reach everyone, because some relationships are not empty. They simply do not exist. But this wisdom brings with it a great responsibility, not to harden, not to succumb to cynicism, to carry awareness with the warmth of the heart, not to lose love, while recognizing absence. The real danger lies not in the soulless, but in the coldness that can freeze within your own heart. Actively developing relationships where true soul encounters occur must be accompanied by spiritual exercises that develop not only awareness, but also love. Steiner considered the development of the heart as important as the development of the mind. Knowledge without love makes a person cold. Love without knowledge makes them naive. When the two come together, true spiritual maturity becomes possible. The signs we examine are not absolute diagnoses, but guiding points. People are complex, and some things that seem soulless may be deep spiritual trauma, a defense mechanism against unbearable pain, or a temporary state. True discernment requires time, observation, and above all, inner honesty. It is easy to label someone who hurts us as soulless. It is more difficult to recognize patterns in different relationships and ask honestly, am I really seeing absence here, or am I seeing my own reflection? The spiritual development of our time requires this honesty. We are living in a transitional period where old certainties are breaking down and new organs of perception are seeking to emerge. Steiner saw our time as decisive. Humanity either develops conscious spiritual perception and discernment or sinks completely into materialistic illusion. Recognizing soulless existence is part of this necessary discernment. Sometimes you sense that some people are truly not there. You are not heartless for protecting yourself from certain relationships. You are not arrogant because you realize that not everyone has the same inner structure. You are awake. And being awake is never comfortable in a sleeping world, but it is always necessary. The real question is not how many soulless people there are. The real question is how you deal with this knowledge. Does this knowledge paralyze you, or does it clear your mind? Does it make you fearful or cautious? Does it lead you away from fear or toward a conscious choice of wisdom? The answer to these questions determines whether this knowledge will liberate you or not. Steiner did not provide a prescription for dealing with soulless people. He described the phenomenon, explained its background, and trusted that each person could make the right decisions from their own self. Because that is what separates you from those without a self. You can choose, you can think, you can select from different options the one that aligns with your deepest inner truth. In this free moral decision-making ability lies your dignity as a human being. Every time you exercise this freedom, you strengthen your identity. When you act consciously instead of automatically, you affirm your spiritual connection. Every time you show compassion despite noticing the coldness, you prove that your heart is alive. The world needs people who can see and still love, who can discern and still remain open, who set boundaries and still remain unhardened. You, who hear these words and find resonance in them, are one of those people. Not to fight, but to protect. Not to blame, but to create spaces where spirits can breathe. Your sensitivity, often interpreted as weakness, is your greatest tool. It allows you to feel what others do not. It alerts you to where danger lies. It connects you with those who carry the same burden. A living self embarking on a journey within matter. Guard this sensitivity like a sacred treasure, not by withdrawing from the world, but by consciously choosing where and how to be present. The coming years will be intense. The distinction between those with a solid sense of self and those without will become more pronounced. Deceptions will be more cunning, masks more perfect. At the same time, the necessity for genuine human connection will also increase. This tension holds both danger and opportunity. The danger of losing direction, the opportunity of finding clarity. Your ability to look deeper is no accident. It is part of your mission in this incarnation. How you use this ability is your freedom. However, it is no coincidence that you possess this ability. The spiritual world provides those it sends to the world with the tools necessary for their specific tasks. Your ability to perceive, the discomfort you feel in the face of teachings, your desire for originality. All of these are signs that you came here with a mission. This mission may not manifest itself through grand actions. Perhaps it is to create an environment where your children's souls can develop. Perhaps it is to preserve a small sanctuary of humanity in your workplace. Perhaps it is simply to show others, through your presence, that there are still people in whom someone truly lives. Greatness is measured not by visibility but by depth. The anthroposophical understanding is not an invitation to fear soulless people. It is an invitation to awareness. Fear arises from ignorance, from a formless, vague unease. Consciousness arises from understanding, from the ability to classify phenomena and deal with them appropriately. What you understand loses its frightening quality without losing its seriousness. In spiritual traditions, there has always been knowledge about the different degrees and forms of human existence. The idea that all people are equal is a modern democratic idea that has little to do with spiritual reality. Steiner systematized this ancient knowledge for today, translating it into a language suitable for modern consciousness without losing its depth. His findings are not for categorizing people, but for providing guidance in an increasingly uncertain world. If you now look back on your life, on the encounters that surprised you, the relationships that exhausted you, the situations where you felt like you were talking to a wall, perhaps many things will now take on a different meaning. Not everything was your fault. Not everything stemmed from a lack of communication. Sometimes there was simply no one who could understand you. This awareness should not make you cruel. It can make you realistic, compassionate towards yourself, forgiving of your futile efforts. You did what a soul would do. You tried to build bridges, create connections, see the good. It's not against you that some of these bridges lead to nothingness. It's in favor of your soul, which instinctively seeks other souls. Allow this search to continue, but with a sharp perspective. Maintain your openness, but set protective boundaries. Allow your compassion to flow, but know where it flows. Thus, you live as a soulful human, in a world where not everyone is soulful. Honorable, clear, and with a heart that remains awake, despite everything. Now I invite you to write your observations and insights in the comments. Not to blame others, but to share your perception, to exchange ideas with others who are awake. If you feel that words your soul recognizes are being spoken here, subscribe to this channel. Here, a space emerges for those who want to look deeper, who are not satisfied with superficial answers, who have the courage to look at uncomfortable truths. Together we protect this space.